For decades, rumors circulated that a long-lost letter between Princess Diana and Princess Anne would hold answers regarding her last years and the future of the royal family. Now that the letter has been found after 26 years, more questions than answers remain. Diana reached out to Anne, even though they were estranged, for what reason? Did the royal family want a message buried forever, a warning, or a cry for understanding? Could a single letter alter our entire understanding of Princess Diana? Rumors swirled for decades about a lost letter to Princess Anne, which may provide information regarding Diana's struggles and the future of the royal family. Eventually, after 26 years, the letter was discovered. The two were never very close. Hearn, why then did she write to her? Did the royal family wish we wouldn't see it? Is this a notice? Is it an appeal instead? Plus, what long-suppressed words did Diana have to say? Diana was notoriously reserved in her correspondence, which became famous for its raw emotion and admissions she could not bring herself to reveal in public. The public had seen her most vulnerable times through her handwritten letters to friends and confidants. But this was different from the rest. When she went looking for Princess Anne, of all people, suspicions about their bond started to grow. Was the intention to rectify the situation? An inquiry into understanding? Had something considerably more shocking happened? The royal family continued to remain silent and deny the letter's existence even after it was found. Nevertheless, the rumors were further fueled by their silence. Assuming its contents were harmless, why was it kept secret for such a long time? Some thought the letter contained hidden truths about Diana's dying years, something she had to endure but never spoke about. A foretelling of future events, perhaps even a description of the stifling nature of royal existence. On the other hand, some saw it as a representation of the complicated dynamics between two women who had only a superficial acquaintance. To completely grasp the importance of this letter, one needs go back in time several decades to a time when Diana and Anne were simply two women, divided by duty but united by everything else. Their connection has always been complicated. The public was captivated by Diana's charisma and friendliness, but Anne was firm that responsibility took precedence over emotions. What she saw as pointless public displays and theatrics were things she would not stand for. According to her, Diana was overly concerned with the approval she earned and was always trying to please others. They had not been friendly in their first encounters. In the months leading up to her 1991 wedding to Prince Charles, Diana made every effort to become close to her sister-in-law. She wanted to make a good impression and show that she respected the royal family's rigid traditions. But Anne was unconcerned. She had seen too many newcomers try to conform to their ideas of what a royal should be like, so she had no interest in what she perceived as Diana's charm offensive. We were particularly interested in one case. Just a few weeks later, in late June, Diana would tie the knot. The distance between them seemed to be widening, so she sought out Anne in the hopes that they may have a moment of intimacy. She had welcomed Anne with the proper formality befitting a member of the royal family. Yet Anne paid her little attention and seldom looked up from her task. It was clear that Diana had kept the icy attitude from that time, and their bond continued to grow. It was never Anne's intention to be her friend. Just why, though? For what reason did Anne initially reject Diana? Many people assumed that the discrepancy was due to simple personality quirks. As a queen, Anne was known to lead a simple life. She worked tirelessly behind the scenes, fulfilling her duties without seeking praise. Still, no matter how dedicated she was never given the attention she deserved. The media had never before focused so intently on her as they had on Diana. That was unjust, in her opinion. Despite working relentlessly for very little pay, Diana remained the center of attention and admiration at all times. The animosity just festered over time. And had already earned a reputation as a dogged royal by the time the 1980s rolled around. Countless engagements had passed, and each time she had given her absolute best. Next, Diana showed up. The narrative had evolved as a result of her inherent charisma, genuine interest in people's lives, and talent for captivating an audience. The world no longer finds value in Anne's work. To them, Diana embodied all that was desirable. During this time, another little but significant rift formed, which is believed to have played a role in Anne's icy attitude towards Diana. There was widespread speculation that Anne might serve as Prince William's godmother upon his birth in 1992. In the end, Charles had been both Peter's godfather and Anne's son. It was assumed that the favor would be returned, of course. But Diana had different ideas. Instead of Anne, Diana picked someone she loved more than anyone in the royal family. Nobody disregarded this option, and felt even more overshadowed by Diana after her public rejection for a role she had believed was hers. Nevertheless, that was not the end. When Prince Harry was born in 1984, Anne thought she would be considered at the very least. But Diana picked someone else again. This time, Anne let it get to her, and gave a very illuminating response. Prince Harry's christening was marked by Anne's glaring absence, despite the fact that everyone else in the family was there to share in the joy. The official reason she gave? A prior commitment. Many, though, mistook it for a deliberate comment. A hunting party was entertained by and at her home in Gloucestershire, while the royal family congregated at Windsor Castle. The silence was deafening in its rejection. It was an easy message to understand. If she didn't feel she belonged, there was no use in her being there. Even though they were at odds, Diana never publicly brought up Anne. She remained silent regarding the coldness and disconnection that had characterized their conversations. That being said, it was there. And with its recent discovery, this letter has raised new concerns. Was this Diana's final effort to get in contact? Had she made an effort to be more approachable in an effort to mend the fences that had grown between them? The reason Anne had never acknowledged it was perhaps the most pressing. If she had understood, why had she remained silent? Did she consider it a bust? Just as she had dismissed Diana many years ago? Alternately, was the truth anything far more complex? A single letter has the potential to alter everyone's perception of Diana and Anne's relationship. But to get to the point where Diana understood the significance of her writing, one had to go back even farther to the years when her life began to crumble, when she was more alone than before, and when writing became her sole escape. Diana may have been seeking understanding in her twilight years, something she had never experienced before, if she had really written to Anne. The royal palace walls were adorned with traditions and unspoken rules that dictated behavior, emotions, and relationships, and Diana had always known this. By the early 1990s, the mask she had been wearing to navigate the complex web of expectations had begun to crumble. The once idolated dream of her marriage to Prince Charles had long since given way to the harsh truth that she could no longer escape. Alone she stood. Along with her marriage came a decline in her status within the royal family. The noise level of the whispers reached a deafening level by 1992. When Diana and Charles made more nervous public appearances in the past, the media had watched them closely. In the royal palace, things were much worse. Because she had lost touch with who she was, Diana felt trapped in her life. Aside from her deteriorating mental health, she had no friends among the royal family. Her marriage was also in disarray. On multiple occasions, she had tried to solicit assistance from those closest to her, only to be met with cold indifference. Despite the royal family's long-established air of emotional restraint, Diana often mistook their apparent estrangement for purpose. Close friends of hers had informed her that she was a nuisance, an affront to the meticulous order that the monarchy had painstakingly built up throughout the years. As her marriage collapsed, her standing with her extended family deteriorated further. Once upon a time, despite their differences, she believed that someone like Anne might have understood her struggles. But she was incorrect. There had always been Anne as a foundational element of conventional royal duty. Despite Diana's strain, Anne wore the crown gracefully. Confessions made in front of others or extreme displays of emotion did not win her sympathy. Anne felt that Diana betrayed the monarchy's ideals through her frequent public appearances with the media, her incredibly private interviews, and her willingness to discuss her struggles. But Diana felt she was completely stuck. In the 1990s, a turning point was reached. In December of 1992, British Prime Minister John Major shocked the world by announcing that Charles and Diana were formally divorcing. The news shocked the world, but nobody in the palace was surprised. The family had been waiting for this for years. They were completely unaware of Diana's perspective on the matter. In 1995, Diana gave an in-depth interview to the BBC's Panorama. One of the defining moments of her life was making the decision that would change the course of royal history. She spoke calmly and confidently about her bulimia, her failing marriage, and, at a historical moment, Charles's affair with Camilla Parker Bowles. She made the comment that the marriage was a little cramped because there were three of them. The interview blatantly disdained the monarchy and everything it represented. It was raw, heartfelt, and real. Not only that, but it severed her links to the royal family for good. After that, she felt like an outsider. She is now more than just the estranged wife of the future king. Rumor has it that Anne, like the rest of the royal family, was enraged. In her perspective, Diana's interview was nothing more than a public disgrace that served only to discredit the royal family. Even more importantly, it proved what Anne had suspected all along: Diana was never meant to be a member of the royal family. In spite of their differences, Diana still wrote to Anne. Diana wanted to send a powerful message, and the fact that she kept the letter a secret for decades was proof of that. Just why, though? What on earth could she have said to a woman who had consistently shunned her? In the months after her Panorama interview, Diana's life took a dramatic turn. She was released from the same royal obligations. As far as charity work by royals is concerned, she exceeded all expectations. Thanks to her visits to AIDS clinics, her work with leprosy sufferers, and her humanitarian initiatives in nations devastated by landmines, she became famous as the People's Princess. She was rewriting her legacy when she emerged from the royal shade and into the light she had made for herself. On the other hand, her vulnerability was increasing. Without the shelter of the royal family, she was more exposed than ever to the media and her pursuers. In 1997, Diana's life will come to a close. In the months leading up to her tragic death, she also seemed to be in a hurry. Never before had she written so many letters to trusted friends, colleagues, and family members. The shared feeling of impending doom among all of them hinted to something deeper, something about which she was concerned. In one letter, she voiced her displeasure at being watched. In another, she expressed her fear of being silenced and the problems she was facing. She had never been one to remain silent, even though she knew the risks of speaking out. Then what would her letter to Anne have said? Diana most likely did not anticipate Anne's reciprocal friendliness. She may have written less to attempt to mend their relationship and more to say something no one else in the family would listen to. Perhaps she felt the need to share her story with Anne. Perhaps she held out hope that Anne would come to realize that Diana wasn't as evil as her family had made her out to be. Nonetheless, Anne remained silent regarding the letter. She herself denied ever having written it, and for a long time no one else knew either. A private collection of letters from Diana was auctioned off in 2024, making its existence public for the first time. Among the decades-old, unopened envelopes was one bearing a single note addressed to Anne. The document included the details Diana had always wanted a member of the royal family to know. Diana is a lifelong writer. Writing down her thoughts brought her solace even before she became the most photographed woman in the world, and her life was scrutinized by every tabloid. She found that writing letters helped her work through emotions that she couldn't express verbally and gave her a voice when no one else would listen. But as 1997 progressed, her letters took on a different tone. They suggested a feeling of impending doom and muted despondency, as if she knew that time was of the essence. Diana encountered a challenging circumstance that summer. The protection that came with her royal status was gone when she was freed from her servitude. At the finalization of her divorce from Charles in August 1996, Diana, Princess of Wales, was her new official title once she was stripped of her royal status. It was a small detail, but it made a big difference. The lack of protection from the royal institution made her more vulnerable than before. Something had changed in her life. She started dating Dodi Fayed, son of businessman Mohammed Al Fayed, and spent a lot of time away from Britain. The media never let up on her, whether she was on a humanitarian trip to a conflict zone or a yacht excursion in the Mediterranean. But her closest friends and family sensed something else. She still couldn't sleep, even though everyone else could see that she was embracing a new chapter. Very unpleasant. Something was about to happen, and she was terrified of it too. A feeling of constant surveillance was something Diana had mentioned to her friends. In October of 1996, she wrote to Paul Burrell, her former butler, expressing her belief that someone was trying to eliminate her. She spoke of malevolent forces at work in the background and her growing, uncontrollable paranoia. In spite of her best intentions, Diana included more than simply a plea for reconciliation in her letter to Anne. I would have guessed a warning. She had reasons to believe and needed to hear this message, but no one else knew. Just why Anne, though? Only Anne, out of all the royal family members, had ever been kind to Diana. neither an ally nor a confidant, she had never been. The world's favorite lady had been the object of her critical eye, cold shoulder, and occasionally open disdain. It would have been far more prudent for Diana to write to Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York, with whom she was friendly. But for some reason, Anne was the one she had chosen. Perhaps Diana saw something in her that nobody else did. Anne had a reputation for being the most independent queen because she disregarded tradition and followed her own set of rules. People knew her to be forthright, realistic, and honest to a fault. I suppose Diana felt that and was the only one in the family who could handle the truth and understand her situation. Experts who have researched Diana's last months believe the letter was written between May and July of 1997, however no one knows for sure. For her, this was a turning point. She furthered her humanitarian work, continued her campaign against landmines, and ventured into politically sensitive areas, all of which garnered her media attention. One of her most significant activities since then occurred during her 1997 journey to Angola with the Halo Trust, an organization dedicated to cleaning landmines. In the midst of a live minefield, she captured one of her most famous images there. She proved that she was much more than just a royal icon. And that her bold act of disobedience against the governmental authorities who had ignored the issue made her a catalyst for change. But it put her in danger as well. Several powerful people did not approve of Diana interfering with international affairs, therefore she grew increasingly vocal about her concerns in the months that followed. If Diana had wanted to warn Anne, could the letter have contained details about something she had learnt about? Something she felt the family ought to be worried about? Additionally, the letter may have had a more personal tone. Diana hoped that someone in the royal family would see her for who she really was in her final months. No princess to the people. Spare me the media extravaganza. Above all things, she loved her two boys with all her heart. The woman whose marriage had been an unsuccessful attempt at reconciliation. The woman who had fought her own demons, only to find her supposed supporters cold and uncaring. After more than 26 years, nobody read Diana's work. It was never brought up by Anne. The palace never even acknowledged its presence. There was no sign of ever seeing the letter again, it seemed to have been sealed. That, however, altered in the year 2024. When a private collection of letters from Diana was put up for sale in Essex, royal historians and collectors took notice. Most of the letters were standard fare that everyone has seen before. To her crew, she had written some thank you notes and conversations with pals. The difference, though, was striking. A single sealed envelope was sent to Princess Anne. When the contents of the envelope were revealed to the public, it became clear why the envelope had been sealed for over 26 years, kept in a private collection, and no one had ever heard of it. But when the letter was finally opened in 2004, it stunned people who had spent decades investigating Diana's biography. What was within had no one expected. In neither an effort nor a desperate plea for help were the secrets of the monarchy to be divulged. The fact that Diana had included both her own struggles and predictions about the future made it all the more unsettling. The letter was dated early in 1997, just a few months before Diana's tragic death in Paris. Like all of her letters, these were handwritten in her distinctive script and conveyed feelings that were both real and deeply felt. But the tone was shocking. Neither regret nor despair motivated Diana's writing. The intentional nature of her writing suggested that she was cognizant of the impending events. She detailed the challenges she had encountered and her efforts to navigate a system that was inhospitable to her. She described how she had been rejected because she did not fit in and how her attempts to tell her truth had been met with silence. Above all else, her writings focused on the future of the monarchy and the ways in which Anne, among all individuals, would ultimately shape it. Diana did not say anything with malice. Calm down. On the contrary, her clarity was shocking, as if she had already accepted her destiny. She spoke out about her concerns regarding the group that had supported her before but then left her high and dry when she needed them the most. She also made a prediction that, looking back, appears to have been spot on. According to her, the present monarchy will not endure forever since the traditions that had governed the royal family for generations are being dismantled and would not be tolerated by the next generation. She brought up William and Harry, voicing her worry that the rigorous requirements would push them to quit the school altogether. The most shocking part of the letter was when she spoke to Anne by name, treating her more like a stranger than a sister-in-law. They were different, Diana continued, and they had never truly understood one another. But she did say that she admired Anne's strength and that she could carry out her royal duties without seeking praise or admiration. And, she realized, was all she had hoped to be but had failed miserably at being. Independent, calm, and careless about what other people thought of her. What followed, though, was the lingering mystery that remained after reading the letter. When I can't keep them safe anymore, would you? With such a terrible request, Diana seemed to have already accepted the inevitable, that she would not see her son become an adult. While she was away, she wanted Anne, who had never shown her any affection and had never openly supported her, to watch over William and Harry. Why, Anne? Not even Charles or the Queen would do. Anne may have been cold and uncaring, but Diana may have felt that her sons could receive the love and support that Diana herself could never provide them. Guidance without interference, assistance without spectacles. Neither manipulating public narratives nor the press have ever been Anne's strong suits. She had lived a simple life, fulfilling her duties without expecting recognition. Maybe Diana hoped that Anne was the only one who could help William and Harry deal with the future she found unbearable. The discovery of this letter altered the course of events. People started to question Anne's role in the royal family and if she had ever taken Diana's private advice seriously. Was there any communication between her and William or Harry after Diana's death? Had she ever made an effort to embody Diana's idealized version of herself? Rumors were fueled by the palace's decision to stay mute regarding the letter's validity. Others, though, who had studied Diana's communication style, handwriting, and her penchant for letter writing, concluded that it was genuine. Many were expecting a shocking revelation, but it was not. It failed to disclose any conspiracies, affairs, or betrayals. It was something far more genuine, like a mother's desperate attempt to keep her children company when she couldn't be there in person. On the other hand, had Anne been attentive? Even after Diana passed away, Anne remained as reserved as ever. Not only did she avoid talking about family matters, but she also had unusual interactions with the media. Nonetheless, upon reflection, a number of individuals began to notice subtle shifts. Rumor has it that Anne quietly helped empower William and Harry to make their own decisions in life, despite the fact that she was never particularly close to them when they were younger. Anne was the driving force behind the reforms that modernized the monarchy and granted greater freedom to younger royals. When Prince Harry and Meghan Markle announced their intention to step down from their royal duties in 2000, Anne was one of the few members of the family who refrained from openly criticizing them. Did she remember Diana's words? If so, why? Not only did the letter's 2004 emergence provide answers, but it also raised many questions. For a long time, Diana's story had been told through the lens of a tragic, wasted opportunity and what if. But this letter was special. This was not a story of regret or despair. It was a final demonstration of hope. Diana kept fighting for her sons even though she realized she was losing the battle for herself. Decades later, her words had made a triumphant return, symbolizing the liberation she had long yearned for them. Nevertheless, the question lingered. Had Anne truly complied with Diana's request from years ago? Alternatively, has it been neglected, much like Diana had been for a significant part of her life? The royal family had insisted on keeping it secret. The release of Diana's letter reignited long-simmering tensions over the royal family, its traditions, and the price of duty. The monarchy's ability to both embrace modernity and faithfully follow its long-established traditions was something it had long taken pleasure in. On the other hand, Diana had seen something that anybody else would miss. The innocent awe of royal traditions was fading, and she could sense that the world was shifting. And that, owing to its inherent rigidity, the monarchy would eventually collapse if it did not undergo reform. Instead of just asking her sons to be careful, her remarks to Anne were a subtle warning about the dangers that were to come. Even though she passed away 26 years ago, the warning sounded more relevant than ever before. Royal family members carried on as usual in the years following Diana's passing. The institution remained just as careful behind closed doors as it was in public when they publicly bemoaned her. Raised inside the same rigid constraints that had suffocated their mother, William and Harry were entangled in a web of responsibility and expectation. However, the palace's efforts to maintain order were ultimately unsuccessful. Diana's influence remained. Her influence was so widespread that it affected the monarchy as a whole, from her son's sense of identity to public opinion of the royal family. When they were grown-ups, William and Harry began to follow their mother's lead more closely in their decision-making. More so than with the traditions that were imposed upon them. William, who would go on to become king, did royal life in a modern way, juggling his duties with a healthy dose of independence. He married commoner Catherine Middleton, and their upbringing of children felt drastically different from that of earlier royal successors. They were friendly, approachable, and clearly wanted to give their children the best, most ordinary life they could. Diana wished William would take the position, but only if he could set his own conditions. Nonetheless, Harry took a somewhat bolder step. He and Meghan Markle shocked everyone in 2020 when they announced their intention to retire from royal life entirely in 2021, citing the same problems Diana had faced decades before. Constant media intrusion, insecurity, and loneliness were like watching a replay of past events. In addition, when the two discussed their experiences in interviews, it became clear that Diana had reasonable worries. There was no change to the organization. Just as she had predicted, the younger generation began to rebel, and no one had figured it out. As before, Anne remained silent, steadfast, and devoted to her responsibility. Whether or if Diana's letter had any impact on her was never something she brought up in public. But in the years after Diana's death, there were subtle, almost invisible shifts. Anne, who had long advocated for a smaller royal family, insisted that not every member of the royal family should be required to carry out official duties. She was for practicality, efficiency, and allowing some family members to live their own lives. Whether intentional or not, this mindset mirrored the life Diana had dreamed of for her boys, a life where they could choose their own route. Anne chose not to voice her disapproval with the public after Harry and Meghan left. She appeared unconcerned or dissatisfied. Instead, she remained silent, just as she had been when Diana had written her letter. As the monarchy reaches a tipping point in its history, Diana's statements remain pertinent in the year 24. Despite being concealed for decades, the message of the letter remained timeless. The world is becoming less accustomed to blindly following royal traditions. There has been a shift away from blind loyalty to the crown and towards demands for modernization and accountability. Now more than ever, the royal family must decide whether they will fall further behind or make real progress. Diana was prepared for this. The future of the monarchy, she realized far before anybody else, would be on embracing change rather than clinging to the past. The question of whether the institution will heed her warning is still open. Anne, William, and Harry weren't the only subjects of the letter. Something considerably more important was at stake: a mother's final attempt to change the outcome. It was a poignant reminder that human dignity should never be sacrificed for tradition, or that love and responsibility need not be at odds with one another. The world will never stop thinking about Diana as long as her life and legacy are discussed. We shall always remember her warnings, her remarks, and her hope for the future. We have reached the conclusion of today's video. If you've stuck with us this far, you should definitely check out our other videos.